Pick up your smartphone, record something, and put it out there. That is all there is there to podcasting. And you are a podcaster now. That's what the entire world tells you, isn't it? But is that true? Not really. There is a lot more than that to podcasting. Podcasting is a structured activity with a framework. And one of the very important constituents of that framework is a good podcast equipment setup. In this video, we look at 6 essential podcasting equipments or podcasting gear that you need to have if you're serious in podcasting. Hi, this is Dilip. I'm a podcaster, blogger, and affiliate marketer, and the host of the Podcasting University podcast. Now, if you're new here, then you might want to subscribe to this channel and click the bell notification so that you receive an update whenever I release my new videos. Now, this channel is all about podcasting and podcasting tips. I share practical, implementable, and simple podcasting tips on this channel every Thursday. You might want to go back and check some of the earlier videos that I've released where you will learn a lot of things in terms of getting started with your podcast. So on to the topic for this week, equipment or gears. Do you really need an equipment or any equipment for that matter to start a podcast? Not really. But to counter that question, let me ask you another question. If you are to start a YouTube channel and record videos and put it on YouTube, would you need any equipment? Yes, absolutely. If yes, then why would podcasting be considered as something where you don't need any specialized kind of equipment? Podcasting is just another medium or another channel of content creation, just like video creation. It needs its own podcasting equipments. It needs equipments that are specialized for podcasting. While you can absolutely pick up your smartphone, record something and put it out there for people to listen. If you're serious about podcasting and you started podcasting with a goal in mind, then you want to have some quality, some production quality in the episodes that you're going to release. But does that mean that this good production quality is going to cover up for bad content? Absolutely not. Here is my personal opinion. Bad production quality can survive for some time if your content is good, but will eventually start to fade off. But if your content is bad, then even the best production quality cannot save it from failing. So invest in some equipments. Invest in some equipments for the benefit of your podcast and for your own benefit. Here are 6 essential equipments that I recommend if you want to get started with podcasting on a serious note. These aren't expensive and are light on your pocket. So at a later date, once you've been into it for some time, if you want to upgrade, you can always upgrade to some of the more expensive and better quality equipments. So let's get started with this list of 6 essential equipments. Number 1, a good microphone, or rather a good dynamic microphone. A good dynamic microphone is something that I would recommend if you're getting started with your podcast. Dynamic microphones capture a lot less background noise or ambient noise, and you might save a lot of time on editing your episodes. So I would recommend that you go for a good dynamic microphone. Now there are a few brands that a lot of people recommend. Most podcasters swear by the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X, which is one of the best microphones to get started with, best dynamic microphones to get started with. There are a few other brands as well, which are a little lower in terms of cost, goes easy on your pocket. So I will let you know what are some of my recommended microphones. You'll be able to find a link to all of these microphones in the description box below. Now the ATR 2100X is by far the best dynamic microphone that you can get. It will cost you somewhere around rupees 8,000. The best part about this microphone is that it is a USB microphone. So you don't need an audio interface or anything. All that you need to do is just plug it into your laptop or your computer and you can start recording and you will get excellent studio quality audio. So that is by far one of the best microphones, but it will set you back by about rupees 8,000. The second best microphone that I would recommend is the Maono AU HD300T. Now this is a good microphone. It is both XLR and USB. So depending upon your usage, if you already have an audio interface, you might want to use the XLR cable. Otherwise, you can use the USB cable and plug it directly into your computer and use it. Now this is a good microphone. It costs you somewhere around rupees 5,000. So to get started with, I would recommend that you go for this microphone if you don't want to spare that additional 3,000 rupees for the ATR 2100X. Now the third best option is to go for a low cost conventional dynamic microphone, which will cost you somewhere around 700 to 800 rupees. And then you will have to buy an audio interface or a mixer so that you can pair it with the mixer and then connect it to your laptop and start recording. So there is this microphone, which is a good microphone that from Maono. It is Maono AU WDM01. It's a good option. It comes with the XLR cable. The microphone would cost you somewhere around 700 rupees. It is pretty cheap. If you want to get started, you can go with that. But then keep in mind that you will need an audio interface, which will cost you somewhere around 2,000 rupees. I'll talk about audio interface in a little while. But this is a good option if you don't want to go for the first two options that I spoke about. Now, if you are somebody who wants to record your episodes while you're traveling, or if you're traveling and you record your episodes in different places, then carrying all of this podcasting gear might not be a good option. It might not be easy. So I would recommend going for a good lavalier microphone. There are a lot of good lavalier microphones out there. You can see I'm using one of these wired lavalier microphones. I prefer a wired lavalier microphone because I don't have to go back and check if my audio is getting cut or if there is a disconnection. So it's easier, and this is cost effective as well. It won't cost you a lot. You can get good lavalier microphones for between 1,000 rupees to 2,000 rupees. Boya, Sennheiser and Maono, all of these brands have lavalier microphones. I'll link to a few in the description box. You can always go and purchase one of that. So if you're traveling and if you want to record, you can always use these lavalier microphones. And if you're somebody who's recording your podcast on your smartphones and you want to use some of these online tools to edit your episodes and put it out there, then also I would recommend that you go for the lavalier microphones, because with lavalier microphones, your audio quality will be much better than directly recording into a smartphone. So I would recommend going for a lavalier microphone. You'll be able to find links to some of these good brands, some recommended microphones in the description box below. Now on to the second thing, which is an audio interface or a mixer. An audio interface is something that will help you connect your conventional microphone that comes with an XLR cable to your computer. Now, an audio interface helps convert the signals that are captured by your microphone into something that is readable by your computer. So I think that's enough from an understanding perspective. You don't need to go into too much of technical aspects on how an audio interface works. But you will need an audio interface if you're using an XLR cable and if you're using a microphone which doesn't have the capability of directly recording into your computer using a USB input. So it's better that you go for an audio interface. Now there are a few brands that I would recommend. The first one is the Behringer Euphoria UM2. It is a dual channel. It has two channels. It will cost you somewhere around 5,700. You'll be able to find a link in the description box. The second one is M Audio M Track Solo. It will cost you around 5,000 rupees. It is a single channel audio interface. And the third one is a Hayden HY229. It will cost you somewhere around 1,000 to 1,200 rupees. But it doesn't come with a USB cable. So you will have to buy an XLR to USB cable if you want to use that, and that should cost you somewhere around another 1,000 rupees. So in total that will cost you somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 rupees. Now these are three good simple audio interfaces. It is not more than two channels in some of these, and you actually don't need more than two channels if you're recording solo, or even if you're doing it with a co-host. If you're using a dynamic microphone that needs an audio interface. Now, if you have a slightly more budget, if you can spare a little more money, then I would recommend that you go for a mixer. A mixer is much better than going for a simple audio interface. It will give you a lot more features, more channels, but the only caveat is that you might want to learn a little more of the technical aspects of using a mixer. There are a lot of things in a mixer, like for example, you might want to learn about the controls, you might want to learn how the input works, how the output works, how the mixing happens and all of those things. So it'll be a little more technical. So you might want to go a little more technical into how a mixer works if you're really going for a mixer. But a mixer is always a good option in comparison to an audio interface if you have a little more budget. So there are a few brands that I would recommend. A decent and a low priced one is the Hayden Pro 4-channel mixer. It has 4 channels and it is probably the lowest priced mixer, but is extremely good in terms of the quality. It will cost you about rupees 3,500 and it has a USB output and it comes with a USB cable. So you don't have to spend any additional money for buying the USB cable as well. The second one is the Behringer Q502U mixer. Now this is a mixer from Behringer. It is a 5-channel mixer and it has a USB output as well. I personally use a Behringer mixer, but I somehow wouldn't recommend going for a Behringer because of a couple of reasons. One is that I'm not happy with the kind of quality. While the build quality is a little robust, but there are finer aspects on the mixer that Behringer seems to be missing. Like for example, the power input that goes into Behringer mixers is very feeble. So it tends to break fast, and if it breaks, then your mixer is a waste. So some of these finer aspects on Behringer mixers is something that I'm not personally happy with. So I don't recommend Behringer. But if you have the budget, you can always go for the Behringer 502. It will cost you somewhere around 7,000 rupees and it's one of the best mixers out there. And then there are some of the more costlier and the more jazzy ones. Like for example, you would have heard about the Rodecaster Pro 1 and Rodecaster Pro 2. These are extremely costly. That will cost you somewhere around the 60,000 to 70,000 in India. And there is this Vocaster from Focusrite, which again will cost you a good amount if you are to go for that. But I wouldn't recommend going for these kind of expensive mixers right now until and unless you're seriously into podcasting and you've spent some time in podcasting. So until then, I would recommend that you either go for an audio interface if you don't want to be too technical. But if you're okay with being a little technical, I would recommend going for a good mixer. Now on to the third one, which is the monitoring headphones. So do you really need a monitoring headphone? The answer is yes and maybe a no. A monitoring headphone is an extremely handy equipment. While a lot of people feel that it isn't necessary, it is not required, but I personally feel that it is a good and handy equipment because when you're recording something, feedback actually helps. If you're able to get real-time feedback, then it gives you an option to correct the mistakes that you're doing. For example, when you're recording something without the headphone, you might not know how you are sounding. So if you have the headphones on, you'll be able to get that feedback on where the problem is. Is there an echo? Is your audio sounding okay? Are you sounding okay? How low is your voice? Do you need to amplify your voice? So all of this is good feedback that you get if you're able to use a monitoring headphone. That's why I recommend using a monitoring headphone when you're recording. And if you're recording interviews, then I absolutely recommend using a headphone for both you and your guest as well, because it prevents a lot of that talk back that will happen and you will save a lot of time in editing your episodes if you use a headphone. So I absolutely recommend using a monitoring headphone if you're recording interviews. Now there are a few that I recommend which are good brands and good quality headphones. The first one is One Audio Studio Pro 10. It will cost you around 2,000 rupees on Amazon. It's a good, decent quality headphone with a lot of features. It even has a sharing feature as well. It's one of the best headphones and I personally use this headphone. It's a nice headphone and I would recommend that. The second one is the Maono AU MH01, which again is a good headphone and it will cost you somewhere around 2,700 to 3,000 rupees. You should be able to find a link to both of these headphones in the description box below. It's also a decent quality headphone. And the third one is the Audio Technica ATH M20X. That will cost you around 5,000 rupees and it's one of the best monitoring headphones around. It is slightly on the costlier side, but if you have the budget, you can absolutely go and buy it. It's also good, nice, decent quality headphones. So whatever it is, I wouldn't recommend spending a lot of money on monitoring headphones. Go for a decent quality, low priced monitoring headphone because it will help you save a lot of time on editing your episodes. The fourth thing, that is a pop filter. Now, a pop filter is something that will help reduce the plosives. You know, when we speak, we tend to use these typical words like, for example, the pers and the burs are spelt or pronounced with a ploding sound, a plosive. So your microphone tends to capture that, and while you're talking, it might not look awkward, but when you listen to it, it feels a little awkward, it feels a little irritating. These pop filters help eliminate those plosives. So in a way, it helps simplify your recording process. And in addition to that, these pop filters also help avoid the spit that would unknowingly fall on your microphone. So a pop filter is something that I would recommend. It's pretty low cost. You'll be able to find a good pop filter for between 500 to 700 rupees. There are a few brands that I recommend. I'll leave the link in the description box below. But get a pop filter. It will help you in terms of getting good audio, good listenable audio for your episodes. The fifth thing that you would need is a desk stand or maybe a boom arm. Now, you would have seen singers and performers holding the microphone in their hand and performing. While it looks cool and you also might want to do it, in podcasting, that isn't something that is cool. The more you hold your microphone, the more there are chances of it moving here and there and it capturing the ambient or the background noise. So it is always recommended that you place your microphone on a stand. Now there are two options. One is to go with a desk stand, which you can place on the desk and keep the microphone inside it. Now, if you go with a desk stand, you might want to be a little cautious that you don't accidentally touch it or hit it while you are recording, because you see that I make a lot of these gestures using my hand. So there is a tendency of me accidentally hitting the microphone. You might want to avoid that. At the same time, you don't want to move things on your desk because the microphone will capture those as well. Now, the second option is to go with a boom arm. A boom arm is something that you can fix onto your desk, and it helps expand and contract. You can pull it and contract it and push it and keep it towards an end. But the advantage with a boom arm is that it reduces the shocks that the microphone might capture. You might want to also use a shock mount when you are using the boom arm, but the boom arm essentially helps reduce a lot of the shocks that otherwise the microphone might capture, or the background noise that the microphone might capture. So I would recommend going in for a boom arm. You'll be able to get a pretty decent boom arm for somewhere around 1000 to 1500 rupees. You'll be able to find the links to a few of those in the description box. So go and pick something that you're comfortable with, and then you can use that. But I would recommend going for a boom arm. And finally, the sixth piece is a shock mount, which I just spoke about. A shock mount basically helps reduce the shocks or the sounds or the shocks that your microphone might capture. It easily fixes onto a boom arm, and you can fix your microphone into it, and it reduces the shocks. So I'll show you how a shock mount looks. Now this is how the shock mount will look. This is shock mount. It's a very simple low cost shock mount. There are a lot of different varieties of shock mount, and you can see this is the boom arm. Now this boom arm, it gives me a lot of control, and it is fixed onto my desk. So it helps avoid a lot of the shocks that the microphone might otherwise capture. So I would recommend going in for a shock mount because that will reduce a lot of these unnecessary ambient noise. Now those were the 6 equipments that I recommend that you get started with. Now in total, all of this should cost you somewhere around 8,000 to 9,000 rupees. I would recommend spending that amount if you're serious about podcasting. Now on to a few tips when you're going out there and planning to buy this podcasting equipment. Number 1, don't be extravagant. I would recommend that you go out there and buy some of these low priced, budget friendly equipment which are of decent quality. Now the costlier ones will obviously be extremely good in terms of the quality, but you might not need that right now when you're getting started. Get started, spend some time, maybe a year and a half. Once you're into it, you know that you are in it for the long term and you're seeing the benefits of getting into podcasting. Always go ahead and upgrade your equipments. But until then, I would say that you go for some of these low costed, budget friendly equipments which are of decent quality. Number 2, don't get overwhelmed. Now you'll hear a lot of these technical jargons, technical terms from people when they're talking about mixers, microphones, shock mounts, boom arms. So don't get overwhelmed with all of these technical terms. You don't even need to understand what they are. Just go by some of these recommendations. Go for equipments that are low priced and I think it should be easy for you to handle them. Like what I said, if you don't want to get into a lot of technical aspects, go with an audio interface. It's pretty simple, easy to use. Go with a simple audio interface, a good microphone, a good boom arm, and a shock mount, and I think that is more than enough. So don't get overwhelmed by all of these technical jargons. Number 3, don't fall for the show off. Now you will see some of these big podcasters showing off their podcasting gear, and you will see some of these jazzy mixers and excellent quality microphones and boom arms. Don't fall for all of that. You can always show off when you are established in podcasting, but when you're getting started, I would recommend starting with the bare necessities, the bare basics, and then slowly upgrade. Number 4, avoid cheap imitations. Now this is something that you will find in the market. You will find a lot of these imitations of the bigger branded products. Like for example, when Blue released one of these microphones, which is a jazzy looking nice microphone, there were a lot of the other brands that copied that design and created microphones. So don't fall for that imitation. Now the quality of Blue is something that you might never be able to compare with some of these cheap imitations. So don't fall for these cheap imitations. Go for something that is branded and has been in the audio industry for some time. Those are some of the brands that I recommended in this video. Go for some of those brands. Go for some good quality but lower budget equipment. That is something that I would recommend. So I hope that you found value in this video. If you did, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification, because that will help you stay updated with the latest videos that I release every Thursday. And I talk about a lot of podcasting tips. These are implementable, simple tips that you can get started with your podcast. So don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell notification. I'll be back again the next week with another interesting video on podcasting. But if there is something specific that you would like to learn, then let me know by commenting down there, and I will create a video specifically for you. That's all that I have for this week. I'll come back again the next week. Until then, you take care and have a good rest of the week.